Alright, welcome again to today's lesson. Welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be talking about components, variants, and how to use auto layout, and how to use all this in a design, right? We've talked about style guide, how to create our styles, and as you can see on this right hand side, we've already created our styles. If you don't know how to do that, I'm going to link the video, right? But in this one, we're going to be talking about how to create components, variants, and how to add auto layout, and how to use all this in our designs, right? So basically, let's just go ahead into it, right? First of all, we're just going to hit on F on our keyboard, just the F key, or you can go down here and select your frame, right? So I'll just hit the F key on my keyboard and choose let's just go with a desktop frame. I'll just click desktop on my keyboard and press Shift plus 2 to zoom into the selected one. I can still zoom in more, right? I can still zoom in more. Alright, so here on my keyboard, I'm just going to scroll up and then choose from our list of styles that we've already created and apply our background color. We've already created this style, so again, if you don't know how to create styles, you can check my previous video on how to create styles, right? So we've added our BG color. You can see that this is our background color added now. If I detach the style, you can see this is the color added for our background, right? So that's our background color. Right, so let's go ahead and start adding some text to just show our hierarchy in text and how we added our typography style. Also, if you don't know how to create typography styles, right, there is this site I'll also leave the link to the site below. This is the site here. You can easily come to this site and create your typography, right? So at default it will be on rem, right? You can easily set your base text. Here you can set your base text and you can choose the scale you want it to. I set mine to major third. You can choose minor third, major second, depending. It just all depends on your taste, right? There's no really big deal to that. Then I left my font at enter because that is the major font. Of course, you can change it when you enter your design file. You can still change that up. I left the weight like that. I left everything, left all the colors, all these things. You can still change it in Figma, right? All I just need is the scales that I need. So if your own is in rem and Figma does not use rem and you don't want to go ahead the stress of converting, you can just select px, right? So I can see that h1 here is 61 dot something, h2 is 48, approximately 49, like that. Are you seeing the scale it gives you? And on this right side, you can preview your text in a design, right? It's set to mobile, so let's just go ahead and change this to desktop. You can see how it will look in a desktop file, right? Let's just click full screen, so you can see how it will look in a desktop file, right? You can see this is how you can just preview your site. So if you are okay with this, like me now, I'm okay with this, so I can just go back and say, okay, my H1 here is 61.4, and you can just easily click on this thing and it will copy, right? Once you click on this, you see it's copied. You can then go into your Figma file, right, and just paste it there. So let me just write a text. And click. The boy is learning. Alright, so this is our text, and you can see here we already have our style set up. But in case if you don't have your style set up, right, you can easily just detach this and paste that value we selected. So this is our H1 because according to that site, this is our H1. So I can set it, because I'll leave it in semi-bold. I can set the line height. If you go back to that site, you see that it gave us line height also, right? So you can see the line height is set. This is the line height, 1.6. You can easily increase it, okay? So but I'm just going to leave mine like that. I'm just going to leave mine as auto. You can easily set your line height. If you don't know anything about line height, you need to check my previous video. I explained everything about all that, okay? So let's just not waste time. We've talked about all this in our previous video. You can check that out. The color, I can easily set my color here and choose the color. I have text colors, right? So, but I already have my styles set up, so you can use that site to check your styles and set them up in Figma using those styles. I already have mine set up, and I'm just going to leave mine as H1. So I'll also leave a link to a tweet on X, a post on X, right, about how you can learn typography, because as a designer, the first thing you need to know is typography. Second thing is color style, right? So I'm going to leave the link to that also. You know how to learn how you can master typography, both when you're creating websites and mobile apps, right? So this is my H1, and let me just select this. That's my text color one. So I'm just going to hold my Alt key, click and drag down here and put this one, my H2. Alright, I'm just going to hold the Alt key, click and drag. By the way, if you hold your Alt key and click and drag, you can see that it's just going in different directions. But if while holding my Alt key and my clicking, I can just still put another finger on my Shift key. You understand? And you can see that it aligns. So remember, if you want it to align to the same line, to the same straight line as your other text, all you need to do is just, while holding down your Alt key is to duplicate it, while holding down your Alt key and you are clicking and dragging, make sure your hand is also on Shift key. Are you seeing? Watch my hand without holding the Shift key. You can see I can drag it anywhere, but while holding the Shift key, you can see that it just aligns to the same position. I can't just either vertically or horizontally. I can't just drag it anywhere while holding the Shift key. Okay, that is a quick tip for you to know. All right, with this one, I'm going to name this one H3. By the way, I just have H1 to H4. You can choose to set up to H6 depending on your work. All right. So I have, this is H1, H2, H3, H4. Then one last one I have for body text. Okay, I have for, this is my body. I know I can have up to H5, H6, but I just didn't go on to have H4, H5, H6. Okay. Then the last one is tagline. Yours doesn't have to be like this, okay? But you understand what I'm trying to say. So this is the text I have in this place, right? So next will be our color styles. We already have color styles set up, right? Now this is my primary color, secondary color. Those are the only two I have. Then I have background color and text colors. Yours can be different again. Go back to my previous video and you can know all about that there. Alright, so there's this other site I want to mention to you. Remember the first one I mentioned was coolers.co in the other side. Now this site, let's bring up another frame in here, right? Let's say this is our frame. We go to our styles and set it as to our primary color. Let's say this is our primary color, but we want to have other. Remember, let's rename this color. Okay. So it's always good practice to always rename your layers. How do you rename your layers? Just go to the layer and double click. Right, and you can, after writing it, just press enter. So after my design, I normally rename this thing, but for now I'll leave it as desktop. I only rename the frames within for now. But after my design, I'll make sure to rename this few frame. Okay, so this is our primary color, right? We want to have different shades of this primary color, because in your design you have a primary color, of course, you have a secondary color, of course, but you need to have different shades that you can use. For example, different shades of black, different shades of this one. Understand? So there's a cool site where you can generate that. Is to go to this site. I'll also link it in the video. This is the site here. I'll put the link. So let's get that our color, right? To get this color, all we need to do is to just detach the style and come here, press Ctrl C. Let's go back to that site. Come here, clean this off. I can just press Ctrl V. I see we have our color here now. So you see the different shades it gave us for this same color. Alright, so in a color now I can have different shades, and here you can choose how many number you want of the just. Let's say you choose 7. I see, but I'll just leave it to 10. So how to get all these color codes? You can just say this is our main one. So you can just select this one and it will give you the color, right? all you need to do when it gives you this color, go into Figma. Let's say this one is here. Alright, so this is the lighter color it gave us. So I'll just copy this. It says copy, just click on it to copy. Go ahead into Figma and let's duplicate. Remember how to duplicate, right? Let's duplicate this. Come into this place, paste it. I see we've pasted it. So, but this will not fit the contrast check. So, what are we going to do? I'm going to create a new frame in between this, but for now, let's just go ahead. Alright. So this is our lighter color. Let's also still duplicate this again. I just pressed Ctrl D to duplicate it. Let's bring it in here. Alright, let's go to another color. Let's say we want this one. So basically you can just be clicking any color and be taking it, right? So I've clicked on this color, click on it, copy it, come into Figma, right? Come to the color picker and paste it. So you can see that I have different variants of this my primary color. So in my design I can choose to add this one, in my design I can still choose to add this one. So it's just different variants of, but all of them are still under my color. You understand? So basically that's just how to select your color styles. When after you choose a base color from color.co, you come over to the other side in DG. I'll put the link, and then you can get different variations of that color. So you see some people have color codes from maybe color 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. They use their 500 as the base color, so they have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, up to 900. You understand? It's just different variations of the same color. Yeah, I hope that is clear. There's also another way to do it by using a widget. There's a widget for you to be able to get that sorted out. Okay. Let's just check the widget, saved widget. It's in color levels generator. That is the widget. You can just go ahead and search for color levels generator. Once you click on it, are you seeing? I have different color codes here. Yet I have different color codes here. But let's say I don't want this for this color code. Let's choose what's this one. Copy it, right? Then I come into this place and click and paste it. So now I have, okay, that didn't work, that didn't work. That didn't work. For some reason. But okay, that's another way to generate color levels. And then there's still another way too, which is just by picking this your base color, right? Coming over to the fill section, click on the plus icon to add on that color. You can either add black, so you see this is black. I think it has given us another shade of color. You can choose to duplicate it again. Choose to duplicate it over here again, and then maybe darken the color to say 40. I think it has given us another shade again. Or you can easily just come to this place and choose. You may not only choose white, you can choose black also, either white or black. You understand? And just play with the levels percentage. So you can see this under shade of this color. If I add 40, you can see this under shade. If I add 64, you can see this under shade. If I add 80, you can see this under shade. So this can be my 100, this is my 200, I can add another one 300. Then as I'm going darker, instead of adding FFF, I'll just add 0000. You understand? And I can be having different variations of that color, right? Darker and more darker. Hope that is clear. So I've shown you 3 ways. The first is by going to that site I'll link. Second is just by using that widget. Third is by using this. You have your base color underneath, and then you just add 000. That is pure black or pure white. You get different levels of that. Again, if there's anything you don't understand, make sure to drop it in the comment section, and I'll be there to help you out. All right. So that is that on text and colors. Just a brief recap of our last video. Alright, so next we'll be going into components. How to create components. And alright, welcome. We're going into components. Basically, what are components? Components are just reused, just like styles. Components are reusable files or reusable designs that we can use, you understand, to speed up our workflow. You get? So I'm going to show you some how you can create components and how you can get started. Okay, let's just increase this frame. Okay, so we've increased the frame. Now let's go ahead and create a component. So let's say in our component, what do we want to have? Of course, the top nav bar, right, which is the bar that will be up above where you see that home, the logo, home, about us, blah blah blah, and then the buttons. Understand, that is the top nav bar. Then we can choose to have buttons also, the buttons on the right side or whatever. We can have our primary button and our secondary button. So we'll create that and also create variants for it. You understand? Then we can also choose to have cards as our component, right? So I will teach you all that in this section of the video. Let's go over and start creating some components. So our first component is, let's just create a button first, right? So I'll hold, and again in this video I'm also going to be teaching you how to use auto layout. Understand? I've taught you how to use frames. Frames is just easy, just press F key. This desktop frame we're using is a frame. You can use desktop frame. I use frames instead of rectangles. You understand? So instead of you using a rectangle in your design, I will suggest you use frame, because inside your frame you can add a text. As you see inside this desktop frame, we have text, we have all these shapes and all these other frames. But if I'm using just a rectangle, I can't add a text into that rectangle. You understand? So I prefer if you want to draw a frame, if you want to draw a rectangle, just use a frame instead. You can add an image to that frame, you can add anything you want to that frame. It's better than just using a normal rectangle. Of course, there will be the point of you using a rectangle, basically maybe when you want to merge, do some mergings, then you can use rectangle. But if it's just normal design, you're not doing any of those unions, mergings, just use frames. It will give you more options. That is that on frames, alright? So we're going to be touching auto layout in this component section, so let's stay tuned. Alright, let's do the component. Let's do button. This will be a button. Let's say our button will be but let's just say button primary button, right? So this is our text. Now we're going to change the styles. That is the importance of styles. Let's just put the styles as B1 for now. Let's just say this B1 is our okay. So to create auto layout in your design, okay, first before we do that, let's change the color to our text one. Alright, so to create auto layout is very easy. Alright, so you work with frames, you work with auto layout, but auto layout is the most easiest because it gives you a lot of options. Right, so to create auto layout, all you need to do, this text is selected, I want to put it in an auto layout. I'll just press Shift plus A on my keyboard, the Shift plus A button on my keyboard. Understand? I don't know what Shift will be on a Mac, but it's just basically Shift plus A. Okay. Then remember, rename. So frame, instead of frame, I'll just say primary button, or whatever. In your work, it may not be primary, but in your work, it can be whatever you choose to name it. But just renaming is just for easier access. Okay, so I have this here, and I'll have to start doing some customizations. Okay, for my primary button, I wanted to have my primary color. Let's say that. Then basically this text color will have to change. Maybe let this text color be my BG color. Oh shit. No, I can't use that. No, let's just leave the primary color that was there. I don't know if this will fit the contrast, so let's check. Okay, it fits the contrast. Remember, I taught you how to do this contrast thing. It's in my former video. Alright, so it fits contrast. Now this is my primary button, right? So I'm just going to the gap basically is the space in between text. So let's say we add an icon to this. Now let's just go ahead and add an icon. Let's use Iconify. Of course, there are different plugins to use. When getting icons. You can use hero icons, huge icons. Understand? But let me just use Iconify, and let's just say add. So let's just click this second add, import it as frame. You can choose. One thing I love about Iconify is that you can choose to import as frame or as a component. Understand? The use of importing it as a component is if you have many icons as components in your design, you can easily just switch. You don't need to be coming up into the plugin to keep on adding different icons. No, you can easily just switch components. Understand? We'll come into that a bit later. Alright, but for now let's just add it as a file here. Then I'll go ahead and change the color, of course, so it can be uniform, right, with our text. So this is my primary button. I'll click on the frame again, and one thing to note in your icons, make sure it's always 24px. Alright, that's what I love Iconify, so you can be consistent. So now you can see the gap is active. Now the gap is the space between this icon and this text. That is 8. I normally leave my own as 8 or 12 depending on how you look. Just your eyes has to be very good when designing. Okay, just be creative. Then your padding, this is the left and right padding. It's just the space between this and between the left and the right places. Okay, if I set that to 0, look how it will look. You see that there's no space for your text and icon to breathe. Okay, so when using auto layout, it gives you different options, like I said. So let's just set this to 16, right? Then the other padding is your top and down padding, the same thing as your left and right. Let's just set that to 12. Alright, so maybe let's set this to 24. So now we have a lot of space and it's good like this. Alright, this clip content is also useful. Maybe if I have a shadow inside here, or I just don't want my text overlapping, I can choose to clip content. But this is an auto layout, so I'll just leave that empty. If I was using a frame, then I'll clip the content. Alright. What next? Let me show you what the clip content does. So look at this desktop frame now. If I turned off clip content, right, and I hit on this frame, inside here, you can see that if I'm picking it up, it will be going outside of the frame because it's not clipping the content. But when I come over to this desktop frame, right, and click on clip content, I see it just clips this frame into this other main frame. So that is the essence of clipping content. It works on frames, but auto layout not as much, because auto layout generally will still clip your content. You understand? To fit these paddings you set. Your text can go outside of these paddings you set. These paddings are like restraints for your text to give it space to work. You understand? So you may not really need clipping content when working with auto layout, but you can still check it. You can still check it just for safety. Alright, next thing we work with is the corner radius. Let's just set the corner radius to, maybe if we set 24. I think 24 is okay. Right, then we can click this button and come over to this version. I normally set mine to 100. This place is just to give you that iOS feeling. Understand? That Apple type of rounded corners. You know, Apple are like masters of rounded corners. I didn't say anything, but yet. So let's just set it to 100. You can choose to leave yours at 60, or don't even set it at all. Understand? But I'm just going to, because this is just a demo file, right? So let's just leave it like that. So now we have our primary button set. Now let's just go ahead and set our secondary button. Click, drag. Okay. Click, drag. Alright. So this icon, I should have set it as a component, but it's still fine. When I change all this to component, the icon will still be a component. Alright, so let's set this to be secondary button. But if you look now, one thing is that this secondary button will now look like it's bigger than this one, right? And we don't want that. We want it to maybe, okay, let's say even if it's hugging things, we set this main frame to hug, right? But if you want it hug, means it will just hug the text. So even if I have let's say I see the padding we set it will still be remaining 24 here, 12 here, 12 here, because it's set to hug. You understand? But if I set this now, I say let me remove it from hug, now I set it to fixed width. That means the fixed width is just going to be 265. It's not going to be more than 265. If I set it, let's see, are you seeing what is happening? Are you seeing? So it just depends on your taste. I normally leave mine to hug, understand? But it's depending on what I'm working with, understand? Some of my designs I may leave it as fixed width because the button should not be more than that, depending on the design. You get? So for this one, I'm just going to delete this. For the sake of this design, I'm just going to delete this and leave it to hug. Let's just say other button. Okay, that's a bad name. I don't want it to go more than 190, so let me just leave it as fixed width. Let's just leave this as fixed width. So are you seeing the different options auto layout give us? If I was just working with a normal frame, I won't see these options except I change it to auto layout by pressing Shift and A. So in the height I still have hug. So that means in this button now I can choose to have, I seem to just be hugging the text, just like the way I showed you. So in this one now, let's name it, let's leave it as primary as, okay, but let's change it over here. This one will now be secondary button. So now this one will now be secondary. Alright. Okay. So this one, of course, this one have our probably to be secondary color or something. So how most people set their secondary color is, if your primary is like this, then your secondary, they now choose to maybe not give it a fill and then come to their stroke color and give it that primary color. So you can see that this is your primary button and this is your secondary button, right? So let's say for this one now, I want it to, I can still go up and make this, because the gap between these two is 8, I can choose to name it auto. I can choose to just write auto. So you can see that I have the same spacing. Here it remains 24, here it remains 24, but the space in between is just set to auto to fill. So again, it depends on the type of design. So if I keep on increasing this far, are you seeing the paddings that I've set still remain the same? That's the cool thing about setting it to auto, right? But if I set it to the normal one that was there, 8, it's going to remain 8 like this, right? As it's just going to be on the left. This main gap is just to, like, maybe you're using an input field, you set it at that normal gap, right? So I'm just going to change this to middle and just leave it like that for the sake of this video. So now we have our primary and secondary button. Let's just say these are what we like, right? You may not use this in your video, but let's just say for the sake of this video, this is what we want to use, right? So we'll just go ahead and click on the two of them, right, and come up over here to where this, to where you see this button. Wherever you see this button, you see it's create component. Just click on the arrow beside it and click on create component set. Now create component will make create component just to make it a one component. Make it one component. Create multiple components will mean that two of them will be different separate components. You get? Create a component will be to create one component. Create multiple components will be to create different components at the same time. But create a component set will be like, will be used in this our case, because we want these two to be the same component but just different variants of each other. So you can have the primary button, you can still have the secondary button. Okay, so what we're going to do is just create component set. Alright, but in the case of when you want, maybe you want primary button alone, then you want a primary button of hover, or a primary button when pressed, You know what I mean? Like maybe when someone comes to your primary button on your site and the person brings his cursor or his mouse on top, that hover state, you want that hover state, right? And you want when the person now clicks on it. You understand? All these are states and variants. So you might want to just create this as a normal button with all those states and create this one as its own button. Understand? Then you can now give them all those states that you want, right? But for now, let's just create two of them. So let's duplicate them first in case we still need the normal version. Alright, so while these two are selected, right, I can just easily come over this place and click on create component set. Right, so now I have these two under one component, right? I can just rename these two buttons. So under buttons, I have the primary button and the secondary button. Secondary button, right, and the primary button. So I prefer to always have a page where you save your component. Like you see, all this thing we are doing is in page 1, but me I normally have other pages. Like I can create a new page and name that one components page. How do you rename a page? It's just the same way you rename layers, right? Just by easily clicking on that page name, double clicking, and just set it to whatever you want, right? But I'm just going to leave it as page 1. Okay, so how does this work in your design? Let's say we go up here now, right, and we need a button here. How do you find your components? Any component you set will always be in your assets place, automatically asset to the file. So when you go to the assets place, you can go to, you see created in this file one component, just click on it and then you see your buttons here. So all you need to do is click and drag. Alright, now we have our button over here. So let's say we have our button over here, but in this other place we now want it to, let's say in a site now. Let's look at this site. Let's look at that site I showed us online. Let's go down. I see in this site now. I see over here. Here we have the primary button and we have the secondary button here. Right? So let's go over to our Figma file. Let's say here will be our primary button, here will be our secondary button. But you see when you bring it, it automatically shows you primary button. So what do? You just go over to this place. I see this arrow over here. Click on it and you can see you have your primary and secondary. So you can easily just set it. Okay, now I see that is the cool thing about setting components. You can easily just reuse them. So even if I have 50 screens in this my design file, I just need to import that component. So long as I've set the variant of it, all I need to do is just go up there, change the variant to the one I like, and it's cool. So now you can use this also for icons. You can use it for anything in your file. Alright, so let's say I bring in, let's just bring in some icons. Let's bring in some icons, but now we're going to bring them in as components. Right, icon file. Let's bring in share. Right, so let's just take this share for the sake of this video, import it as components. Right, I see it's already appearing in our assets file. Okay, bring in let's just bring in, I love this design, import it as another component. I see now what them are just adding. Let's bring in one last one just for the sake of this video. Shop. Let's just bring in this one. Put it as another component, right? So you see I have all these components over here. Right? Now let's say in this button now, let's say in this our primary button. But let's go ahead and just create another. Same thing we did for 3 of them, right? Let's combine them as variants, right? Just the same thing we did for the primary and secondary button down there to make them component set. Because this one's already components now, so let me just combine them as variants over here, right? Let's bring in our components here. let's say we bring in this component, right, and we have text. We click on it, click on shop now, right? Let's say we have this text over here. Click on this. Alright, we put it in an auto layout. Remember, holding Shift A, and let's set this to 8, right? Let's give it a stroke of our secondary color stroke, just for the sake of this video. Remember your padding, don't forget. It must not be 24 and 12. I'm just putting 24 and 12 for this video, right? It must not be 24 or 12. You can set it to whatever you want. Right, so let's say we have this now, but remember, we now look, oh, this does not go with this text, right? Alright, let's change this icon. Because we've already imported all our icons as components to our design. Remember what I told you about components? You can easily change it if you have all of them as the same variant. Like our primary and secondary now, we have them as the same, in the same set, so we can easily change it just the way we did up here. Now these icons, remember, we've already set them to the same set. You understand? So ours is 3. You can have 5, 7, depending on how many icons you have in your design. All you need to do is, if you bring in a new icon, just drag it into this place. It will enter the component, and I'll show you how to do that. So now we have 3 set already. So we want to be like, okay, this icon will not fit with this shop now. Okay, let's change it to a one that fits shop now. You can just click on the icon, go over here, just the same way we changed our primary and secondary button, right? Just go over here and click on, okay, we have the shop. I see. Now you easily have, you don't need to go ahead and start importing again. You already have your icons in your design file, and easily just change it. You understand? So now let's say, okay, we need a new more icon, right? We have these 3 icons already. We need another icon. Maybe you are in the process of your design, you find out that you need another icon. Maybe let's say the home icon, right? That's why I love Iconify. You can easily just import things as components and as frames. So let's say we want the home button for our home screen. We are designing an app, import it as component. We close, right? And now we see we've imported this as a component, right? All we need to do is to just drag it into this file. Remember, we've already created a gradient file already. Drag it into it. Alright, now it's added to our component sections. Let's rename this to icons. Okay, now it's added to our icons variant. So let's switch over to this button again. Let's say we now edit this button. We now take this button somewhere else, right? We take this button over here now, right? And over here now we now have this one is now home, right? But we want to edit this icon now. We don't need to start opening Iconify to edit. No, remember, we've already imported all our icons as components, put them into the same components file, right? We can easily just go here. Remember, we've added it already, so automatically it updates over here. You can just go ahead and change it to home. So do you see how easy components works? Components will save you a lot of time. In the beginning, it may seem stressful because you may be setting components here and there, but trust me, as you go on, once you do that at the first stage of your design, before designing, it will save you a lot of time. You understand? So just imagine I've imported all my icons, I've done all my buttons, all my cards, created all this, right, as components, and I'm designing. I'm in my 47th screen. I don't need to come and start designing afresh. No, I just need to go to my icons, go to my components, start switching them up, start changing them. You understand? That is just how it works. Components are very easy to do. Yet, and just in the case of icons now, you saw how I brought in another icon. Let's say now we have 4 icons now. If you want to add in another icon, sharp, go over to Iconify, import it to your design file as component, then make sure you drag it into your normal icons component frame as a variant. Just drag it in and drop it there. It will automatically update. Alright, then you can easily reuse it in your file. So that is all for icons. Another thing you should know about components, is that you should never delete the main component frame. You understand? Never delete these are the parent components, right? And wherever you used it in your design file are the variants. You understand? This is the main parent component and these are the variants. So watch now, if I go to this my home icon, right, and I delete it from here, nothing happens. The icon has just deleted, right? But if I go to my parent component and I find that same icon and I delete it from there, when I go over to this, shop now, go over to this place, you will see that home icon is no longer showing there again. I see that home icon is no longer showing there again, so I cannot set that thing again. Alright, so you must make sure never to delete components from your home. But I've brought it back now. If I go over to my home, you can see the home is back there. So make sure to never delete it from your home, from your parent component. You can delete from your parent, but never delete from your parent component. If you want to do anything to your parent component, just edit. Don't delete anything, because note that whatever you do to your parent component will affect all your variants. You understand? So if you want to delete something from your parent component, make sure you are certain about it. You don't want this in your design file. So because imagine if you've done many screens, maybe it's a website and this website has 4 pages, and you've done those 4 pages, you now go to the parent component and mistakenly delete something from there. It's gone from wherever you've used that component in your design file. Is gone. You understand? So, but if you know that, okay, you don't want this again in your design file, good. That is another easy way to do it. Instead of you deleting it one by one from everywhere you used it in your design file, you can easily just go straight to your components and delete it from there, and that change will take place in all files of your design. You understand? So basically, that is it about components. Now, let me show you one more thing before we skip this component section. This is my main component, remember, for my buttons. Right? Let's say I go into this main component and I say this text is not really fitting for me. Let me just say I want this primary. Oh, this is not the way to spell primary. It has double R. Are you seeing? Whatever changes I make to this parent component happens to this main one. Do you get it? So let me cancel that back. I think it has cancelled. If I go to this different one and just set it primary, no matter what I do, it doesn't affect the main component, because this is the parent. It's only what the parent does that affects the child. What the child does can never affect the parent. You understand? So that is just basically one thing you need to know. If I go over here now, and delete this text, it will delete in all. Well, imagine I have 70 screens or 4 pages of a website, and I delete something from the main component, is gone in all my files. So that is a cool way it has advantage because it helps you assemble all your files in one piece, and you can easily delete or make changes. You don't have to go and be doing them one after the other. You understand? So that is everything you should know about components, right? Alright, let's just go and set up one more thing on these buttons before we go over. Alright, so let's say we have these buttons now. For this one, I want to have the hover state. Like, let's say when someone clicks on it, right? When someone comes over our button, it should hover. When the person clicks on it, the person should have that click state. Alright, so I'm just going to remember how to duplicate, right? Just bring it out here. Bring it out here like this. Alright, so I know you're wondering, this guy's brought out the main component. No, the main component is still there. This is just another variant of it, right? So I bring this out, and remember, this is my primary button. I duplicate it by pressing Ctrl D, bring it down again. So I set this to my hover. Let's just say primary button, primary hover, right? I duplicate this again, and let's just say this is primary click. Okay, so when the user comes to this our button, this is the main button. You see when he brings his cursor, it hovers, it shows this hover state, and then when he clicks, it shows this click state. You can call it clicked or pressed. Alright, so when the user hovers over the button, what do you want? You want it to show maybe a darker color, right? So remember those colors we set up. You see why in your, whenever you have colors, you need to have different shades of the color, different hues of the color. That's why I showed you that site. All right, that's why I showed you how to do it in our previous session. All right, so if you don't, maybe you're just joining this video now, maybe you skipped or something, you're not attentive, you need to just pause the video here, rewind it a bit, and you will get how I did that. All right, so go back to those colors. Let's just go to those colors that we set. All right, let's say, but this is our primary button, and when the user hovers, want it to show this. Let's just choose this color. So let's see. Let's just choose this color, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this place, detach the star, click my color tool, let's minimize this, right? Then I'll click my eyedropper tool, right? Click the eyedropper tool and go over to this color and choose it. You understand? So this now becomes my hover state. Alright, this now becomes my hover state. So when the user brings his cursor, it shows this hover state. Then clicked can now be, maybe for clicked, I want it to remain the same color, but it should have an inner shadow feel. You understand? My hover tool can also still show a shadow. You understand? Most people will just go over to effect and start setting up their shadows, but me, that is too much stress for me, right? So what I do, oh shit, I'm sorry about that. Right, so what I do is I go over to my plugins, because basically I like things that speed up my workflow, right? I go over to my plugins and click on this icon called Beautiful Shadows. Right, Beautiful Shadows. That's the icon. You can easily come over to this color section. You have your eyedropper tool to choose your color, or you can easily just set your color over here. Alright, I'm just going to leave mine as 000 for the sake of this video. Then you can change the settings here. Alright, you can change the settings, how bright you want your shadow to be. If I set it to 40%, I see how bright my shadow is in the background, but I'm just going to leave it as a default setting, so you can just play around with it. Alright, play around with the angles, the diameter, everything here. Alright, play around with it. You can easily even just shift it here too. If you shift, wherever you shift it to, that will be the direction of your video, of your shadow, sorry. Then this is for the intensity. This small circle is for the intensity of your shadow, and this one is for the diameter of your shadow. So I'm just going to leave this at 132 and leave this at 10 again, so it cannot be that too sharp. Alright, now you can see I have all my shadows set here. So whenever the user clicks on this, it changes to this and hovers. You understand? And I want, when the user clicks on this, it has to show that it is active, right? So I can choose to maybe add a stroke color or something. Let's say PG color, whatever. Now look, this is up to you, okay? Doesn't mean you need to think too much about it. Just whatever works best for your design, whatever you feel is good in your design, go ahead and do that. Okay, you have a sharp eyes, you have a creative mind, work with that and trust that the process will come out fine. Right, so for this video I'm just going to leave it as this. Of course, if I'm designing a normal file, it may not be this way, but I'm just going to leave it as this for now. So this will be, let's go back to our file so we can rename to save us some stress in the future. So this will be my, let's just name this to default. Alright, so let me show you a cool way. Let me save this to primary, then put the slash and put default. You will see the essence of this later. Let's put this and set this to primary slash over, right? Set this to primary slash clicked. Okay, so now we have all this set up, right? Now we're going to we're going to select 3 of them, right? Remember how we did before? Select 3 of them, go up, and then click on these 3 icons. And not, remember, it's not create component or create multiple components. What you need to do is create a component set. All right, but if you want to go about it the long way, you can just click here, click on Control Alternate K, alright, to create a component, to create it as a normal component, right? So let me just click create onto that here. Alright, now I have this as a component. Alright, remember this is the icon for a component and this is the icon for a variant or an instance, so know the difference. Alright, so let me just set all of them as components. Alright, now I have all these three as components now, but I want them together in the same file, because remember how we did our other components, for you to have them work as instances or as variants, you need to have them as variants of one particular component, right? So now we want this hover and click to be variant of this primary button. This primary button is the main button. We want this to just as different variants or instances of this primary button. So you've set it primary slash this. Go ahead and click on combine as variants. You click on it. I see, now we have our components set up over here. Right. Let's go up. I see, these are our button, these are our primary component. Now you see it's automatically set as automatically renamed it to primary. If you scroll down, you can see you have your click, hover and default. So you see those slashes we put, Figma already notices that okay, these buttons are, this thing he's setting is, all of them are going to be sub under the primary. Remember how we created our text styles in the previous video, right? When we're creating text styles, we set our text styles, our text color styles to text color /1, text color /2. So all those styles will be, all those 1, 2 will be on that text color. It's the same thing we did here. Primary / clicked hover default. So all these clicked hover default state will be under our primary. So that is just a faster way to rename your folders and your components.